Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about your sewing machine, your needle, your bobbins, and your thread. I love my old Singer featherweight. I have a machine with a lot of whistles and bells. It's a really fancy quilting machine, but I always go back to the featherweight. It has a beautiful little stitch. It goes frontwards, goes backwards, and that's about all we need for quilting. So I love it. This little gizmo here is actually, it was made for me, but it's actually just to lift the thread off of a bigger cone like this. And it's not really necessary unless you are working with a big spool of thread. You can get metal ones like this at one of the big chain fabric stores. I know that I've seen them there. As far as thread is concerned, I use neutral threads. Here's a lighter neutral. Here's one that's a little darker. If we're going with a really dark quilt, you can use a navy or a black. I always spin 4 or 5 extra bobbins before I start my work. You can see these are all wound here with the color I'm using. When you're really in a groove and stitching away, it's not much fun to have to stop everything when you run out of thread and wind a new bobbin. Last couple of things which are really important: a 1/4 inch presser foot, which means that it's a 1/4 inch from your needle to the outside edge of the presser foot here. Since we're going to be doing scant 1/4 inch seams, that's going to be a really important measurement for you right there. The last thing I'd like to mention is the size 12 needle here, which is a very good choice for your 100% cottons or flannels that you'll be working with these patterns. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about the tools that you're going to need to make a quilt. The first thing is a 36 by 24 inch quilting mat, and it will look something like this. And you're going to use this to cut against with your rotary blade, and it's a self-healing surface here, so it'll last you a long, long time. The next thing you're going to need is a quilting ruler. This is 24 inches by 6 inches across. These are very handy. Here you have a little 6-inch square quilting ruler and a 12 by 1 inch ruler. When you're doing smaller pieces, making smaller cuts, these come in much more, they're much easier to use than our larger ruler. Alrighty, we need a good pair of scissors. I love these because they're so beautiful. But anything that cuts really well, even if it's not beautiful, works. A smaller pair of scissors like this. These are wonderful for just trimming threads. Also, I use them sometimes if I made a mistake to cut a seam open. Here's the ugly stepsister version. Of course, you're going to need your rotary blade like this. Some have a safety catch that is automatic. This one doesn't. So the blade is now exposed, and you want to make sure that every single time you make a cut, when you're through, you close that blade again. I've seen people drop these on their shoe and have it cut through the shoe leather. So make sure that it's always closed after you've made your cut. A good marker with a fine point to it. You're going to need that in every single quilt that you do. This is my favorite thimble. It's leather. It fits very nicely on your finger. You're going to be using this a lot when you do your hand stitching at the very end of your quilt. A glue stick is handy. When you get your pattern, it's going to be great to cut out a little piece of each one of your fabrics, glue it on your pattern so that you'll know which particular fabric you'll be working with as you follow the directions. So that's handy. Here's our measuring tape. I like the longer one, which is 120 inches. Here we have our see-through tape that we're going to be using on our rulers to mark out, maybe 5/8 on the ruler or 3/8. Some of those really hard to find little designations on your ruler. You'll learn more about how to use this in the tips and tricks section of this DVD. Here we have some extra blades for our rotary cutter. Here we have pins. You're going to be very surprised at how little we use pins when we're quilting. This is handy to use. This is just regular old moleskin that you might take when you're hiking, and you will learn more about how to use this in your tips and tricks section of the DVD. Our last tool here is Jack the Ripper, and he's the tool that hopefully we're going to be using the least of all. If there are any goofs or boo-boos, he's going to help us out, but hopefully we're going to be precision quilters and not need his help at all. He's useful to have though when he's needed. And that's about it for the tools that you're really going to be needing. There are other gadgets, quilting gadgets, and other things that are helpful, but they're not really necessary. So with the basics here, we're ready to go.